Hi everyone! Welcome back to the fourth lecture of our crash course on morphology. In today's session, we'll explore morphs and allomorphs, what they are, how they differ, and why they matter in word formation. So, grab your notes and let's dive deeper into the structure of words. We've already learned about morphemes. Now it's time to see what happens when we look at their actual forms in language. In this lecture, we'll define what a morph really is, the concrete realization of a morpheme in speech or writing. Then we'll move to allomorphs, the fascinating variations of the same morpheme that appear in different contexts. Finally, we'll compare morpheme, morph, and allomorph side by side to understand how they connect and differ. By the end of this lecture, you'll clearly see how these three concepts form the foundation of morphological analysis. Let's begin by understanding what a morph actually is. A morph is the actual, real form or physical realization of a morpheme. It's the sequence of sounds, or letters in writing, that carries a particular meaning. In simple words, if a morpheme is an abstract idea or meaning, then the morph is how that idea appears in real speech or text. So, when we say a morph, we're talking about the concrete expression of a morpheme, something we can actually hear or see. In other words, a morph is the single phonetic or orthographic realization of a morpheme, the real, observable form that represents meaning in a word. We'll see some examples next to make this concept even clearer. Now, let's look at some examples to understand how morphs actually appear in words. In the first example, we have cats. It consists of two morphs, cat and s. Cat is a free morph because it can stand alone as a word, while s is a bound morph, showing the plural form. Next, take the word modern. This one has only one morph, because it cannot be broken down into smaller meaningful parts. The entire word itself is a free morph carrying one complete meaning. Finally, look at jumped. Here we again have two morphs, jump and. The first part, jump, is a free morph that carries the main meaning, and the second part, ed, realized here as t, is a bound inflectional morph marking the past tense. So, as you can see, every word is made up of one or more morphs, and identifying them helps us understand how meaning is built within words. Now that we know what a morph is, let's see how we can classify it. Just like morphemes, morphs can also be free or bound. When we realize morphemes in actual speech or writing, they appear in these two forms. Free morphs are those that can stand alone as words, for example, book or run. Whereas bound morphs, on the other hand, cannot stand alone. They need to attach to another morph to make sense, like s in cats or ed in played. So, in simple terms, free morphs carry meaning independently, while bound morphs depend on others to express meaning. Let's look at a few examples to make the difference between free and bound morphs clearer. First, take the word book. It's made up of just one morph, book. This morph can stand alone and carries meaning by itself, so it's a free morph. Now look at books. Here we have two morphs, book and s. The first one, book, is free, but the s cannot stand on its own. It attaches to book to show plural meaning, so s is a bound morph. Next, consider the word happy. Again, it's a single free morph, because it's meaningful on its own. But when we add ness, we get happiness, which contains two morphs, happy and ness. Here, ness can't appear alone. It depends on happy to form a complete word. That's why ness is a bound morph. So, to summarize, free morphs stand independently, while bound morphs rely on other forms to express meaning. Now that we understand what a morph is, let's talk about something closely related, the allomorph. An allomorph is one of two or more variant forms of the same morpheme. These variations usually occur because of phonological or grammatical conditions. In other words, they change depending on the sounds or the structure around them. So, when a single morpheme appears in different phonetic forms in different contexts, those different realizations are called allomorphs. Now remember, allomorphs occur only when one morpheme has multiple realizations, different sound forms in different environments. Let's look at an example to understand how allomorphs actually work. Here, our morpheme is plural, which carries the meaning more than one. This same morpheme can appear in different forms when realized in speech or writing. The morphs, that is, the written forms, are s and es. Both express plurality, but they're realized differently in pronunciation depending on the word. When we pronounce them, these plural endings appear in different sound forms, called allomorphs. For instance, we say in cats, in dogs, and is in horses. All three of these are allomorphs of the same plural morpheme. The reason they differ is due to phonological context, that is, the sounds that come before them. Swallow's voiceless sounds like T in cats, Swallow's voice sounds like G in dogs, and Swallow's sibilant sounds like S or A in horses. So even though the sounds change, the meaning stays the same. They all express plurality. That's what makes them allomorphs of one morpheme. Now, here's something important to remember. Not all morphs have allomorphs. Every morpheme must have at least one morph, because that's how it's realized in speech or writing. But the reverse isn't always true. Not every morph has allomorphs. In some cases, a morpheme always appears in the same form, no matter the context. When that happens, it means the morpheme has only one morph, and therefore, no allomorphs. For example, take the word cat. The morpheme cat always appears in the same form, cat. It doesn't change depending on sounds or context, so it has one morph and no allomorphs. So, while all allomorphs are morphs, not all morphs become allomorphs. Now that we've learned about morphemes, morphs, and allomorphs separately, let's bring them together and see how they differ. First, a morpheme is an abstract unit of meaning in a language. It exists in our minds as the smallest meaningful element. It represents meaning, but it's not tied to any one sound or spelling. Next, a morph is the actual spoken or written form of that morpheme. It's the physical expression, what we can actually hear or see in real language use. And finally, allomorphs are different forms, or morphs, of the same morpheme that occur in different contexts but carry the same meaning or grammatical function. In short, morpheme equals the meaning, abstract idea, morph equals the form, what we hear or see, written or transcribed form. Allomorph equals variations of that same form in different environments. Together, they show how meaning moves from the mind to the sound, from the abstract to the concrete. Let's take a final look at all three concepts side by side to really see how they connect. First, we have the morpheme. It's the abstract unit of meaning. For example, the idea of plurality, the concept of more than one, is a morpheme. It's the smallest unit that carries meaning in our minds. Next comes the morph. This is the physical form of the morpheme, what we actually hear or see in language. So when we write s or es, those are morphs that represent the plural morpheme. Finally, the allomorph refers to the different shapes or sound forms that one morpheme can take. For instance, the plural morpheme can appear as in cats, in dogs, or as in horses. So to sum it up, morpheme gives the meaning, morph gives the form, and allomorph shows how that form can change while keeping the same meaning. That's all for today's lecture. We've learned how morphemes, morphs, and allomorphs work together to form the structure of words. Stay tuned for the next video. We'll explore types of word, monomorphemic word, bimorphemic word, and trimorphemic/polymorphemic word. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. Your room to learn is just a click away. Like and subscribe today.